Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Backyard Watch podcast. I'm your host, Eric Wall. Join me is my co-host, Jeff White. Jeff, how are you doing?
Hey, that's my name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy Monday, everybody. Best day of the week. And by best day, I mean everyone's just friggin' tired because we had a million long hours of work today. That's fun.
Yeah.
But now we're here for the Backyard Watch podcast. I think this is episode 4.
Yes.
Or 5. I'm losing count. But yeah, it's great to be here on this jolly day. And thank you, Eric. And happy Monday. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, and we're joined here with our jolly guest host.
So jolly.
Yeah. You want to intro him? Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh man, as Eric said, it's a super jolly co-host. He's actually guest. Super jolly guest. He's actually been on the Backyard Watch podcast before. Many of you on the channel 1138 know him as one of the co-hosts of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition podcast, which is on. I don't know if it's Friday nights or Saturday nights or both. It's probably both. It's Zach Arnold, everybody.
You guys make me sound like Santa Claus. I'm so jolly.
Yeah.
So jolly. Oh, it's so good to be here. Yeah, that's about as good a Santa Claus impression as I can get. And that's all you're going to get out of me on a Monday anyway. But you're going to get a lot more out of me when it comes to talking about our discussion topic tonight, because that is something I am very, very excited to talk about. And we get to talk about it this Friday on the Intergalactic Peace Coalition. We had to do it on Saturday due to a scheduling conflict, but traditionally IPC is on Fridays now.
All right. I just when I was hanging out at my house on Saturday, I got a notification from Mixler saying IPC was on. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, just like the old days.
Yeah, the days of old, back when Backyard Watch used to come after IPC.
And it was just a little Easter egg.
Those are the days when Backyard Watch was a secret, and our station manager Chris Sekel would be out in the backyards of New Hampshire, listening to crickets chirping.
Loving those crickets, man.
I am never going to forget that night. I really am not, because it was one of those times when I learned about the power of like media networking and things going viral. It didn't exactly go viral, but it stayed consistent enough that Chris said, if it ever goes below 10 listeners, I'm going to stop broadcasting. And it stayed steady at like 10 to 12 listeners until 4 o'clock in the morning his time. And he was just like, go away. I'm not doing anything special. Stop listening to me. And now we're trying to tell people to, hey, come listen to Backyard Watch, because it is, like you said, an official podcast now in its 4th installment. Congratulations to you guys on getting it started up, and I'm excited to be here with you on this adventure. It's cool. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that was awesome, Zach. Yeah, I was there the first night. The 3 years ago. I forgot about that. I forgot Chris did that. That he stayed up until it went under the certain amount.
Yep.
You know,
I remember that
we're a
vividly.
persistent bunch. You know?
Yeah. I remember it vividly because I was one of those people, and I was just like, I'm just going to keep it open, and if I fall asleep, you're not going to know. It'll just show up as somebody listening, and you're going to stay awake. But no, I made it. I made it pretty far. I was a little bit tired from IPC that night, but I was like, you know what? All I have to do is type. I don't have to call in, and so I would just shoot him stuff in the chat and be like, troll. I was just like laughing so much because I was like,
Man.
you know what? I'm gonna stay up as late as you stay up just because I can.
Yeah, it's almost 3 years now. Like this month will be.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
third
I love it that you mentioned the first episode, Zach, because in the past week and a half, there's been a plethora, and by plethora I mean 2 anniversaries. The IPC podcast had its 3-year anniversary 4 days ago, I believe. And I think you celebrated it a week and a half ago. Am I right?
Yes, we celebrated it officially on the 10th. So that was when we debuted back in 2014. But the 10th was on a Wednesday this year, so we're like, whatever.
Yeah.
So we talked about it on the 5th because I was running late on the 12th. So it made sense to do it closer to the 10th, like on the 12th, and we mentioned it briefly. But we officially celebrated it on the show on the 5th, and then had it on the 10th. Yeah.
And also we here at Backyard Watch are celebrating our 3-year anniversary, which was when, as Zach mentioned, Chris was broadcasting from his backyard, and this occurred right after episode 2 of the IPC podcast on May 18th, 2014.
How about that?
So
you guys have got to be the only podcast that is 3 years old and 4 episodes long.
Well, technically, I don't know. I think of the podcast itself as being a month old, and the Backyard Watch idea being 3 years old.
That's fair. That's a fair way to put it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean 3 years of jolliness, combined with me being on Channel M38 every once in a while, off and on here and there, and now the station has a niche following and it's surviving, and I like it.
I'm enjoying every opportunity I get to be on. The problem is I'm usually in college, and so Friday nights even that sometimes conflict, and Monday nights definitely conflict. Tuesday nights don't even think about it, and so it's just like time after time. I try and come up with an opportunity to be on the channel. You know, I've got other podcasting ideas as well. You know, I've got my show Sci-Fi Symphony that I like to do on occasion.
Yeah.
And I only get to do it, maybe once a quarter, and I'd love to be able to do it more consistently. And you hear the dog barking in the background. That's great ambiance for Backyard Watch. That's fantastic. But
Eric, what's your dog doing?
There's just so many great opportunities.
That's a really good question, by the way.
There's so many great things that Channel 1138 can do, and it's very versatile. And part of that versatility is exemplified in something as niche and fun to be a part of as Backyard Watch. So yeah, I'm excited.
The thing I realized that I've noticed, like over the past 4 years that the station's been around, like a lot of the podcast hosts have become really close together.
Yes.
It's so fascinating seeing these friendships develop and these interactions and relationships and whatnot. It's super jolly time. A lot of great people, and despite a little drama here and there with like a show or two, despite that, I mean that happens everywhere. But despite that, we still have that niche following and some people who proudly support the station. And I'm just happy to still be a part of it, man. I love it, Zach.
Well, I tell you what, man. Backyard Watch, IPC, and the SWU are probably the longest standing podcasts in America. I will say Rory's podcast, Everything Geek. In Great Britain.
Of all podcasts, really?
On Channel 1138.
Okay.
On Channel 1138.
There you go. Okay.
I mean, we're only talking about Channel 1138 right now, aren't we?
Yeah, you are right. Sorry, I heard your statement, and I only heard it as
I did use a bit of hyperbole, but you're allowed to do that on talk radio. Come on, man. That's part of the fun. You gotta loosen people up a little bit and make them feel like they're being part of the fun. And so if people are out there listening to this and they're thinking, wow, this show's got a lot of longevity, like the entire United States, are you kidding me? Like all of a sudden you've just got like this instant legitimacy to you. You're just like, oh wow, these guys are so big, so important. But yeah, I mean, the people like Backyard Watch and IPC and the SWU, I don't want to give anything away if you guys have been keeping it a secret, but there may be a chance where there's just like a giant blending of all those podcasts towards the end of the year, and that just kind of exemplifies the relationships and the friendships that are being built on this thing. The last I counted, let me see, 1, 2, I think there's at least 5 podcasts going to be represented on like a megapod at the end of the year, and that is just an exciting thought.
We're gonna keep the details under wraps. We're gonna just want to give the audience something to be hyped about for the future.
Exactly.
But just know something big's going to happen at the station at the end of the year. It reminds me, I think it was 2014. Yes, it was also around this time. Because to give you some context, a few months prior in 2014, the Channel M38 went 24/7. They were broadcasting all the time, starting then. Before that, it was just like off air whenever podcasts were airing. But I remember on Star Wars Day, May 4th, 2014. I think I got the year right. But one of our podcast hosts, Thomas Bradshaw, who still works with us from time to time. I remember he was posting like a whole like super long radio show of just like airing Star Wars music and having guests on and just talking about Star Wars, just celebrating the jolliness and awesomeness that is Star Wars. And it's that kind of thing that I love, that whenever the station has the resources and ability to have one of these mega podcasts. And that's why I am extremely excited for what we're going to do at the end of the year. I mean, man, you're getting me hyped up, Zach. I love it.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing the hype factor in reverse. It's usually at the end of the show, but we're hyping people up at the beginning of the show. But it's all good fun, and there's a lot of fun still to be had because we have a really awesome discussion piece tonight, don't we?
Oh yes, man, thank you for the segue. So today, if you listened to the Backyard Watch podcast last week, you probably find this topic familiar. But today on the Backyard Watch podcast, we are all discussing the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Finally. I apologize that we did not discuss this last week. I know the movie just came out, right before last week's episode, so I apologize for that. But I wanted to just give some time so that everyone could see the movie, and we're very grateful to have Zach Arnold here to help discuss Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So Zach, let's give us a nice, clean, jolly rundown. What was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 about? What's it about?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that it's trying to encompass. And to a certain degree, I felt like they covered it very, very well. And then in other areas, I felt like it needed a little bit of work. But I'm one of those people that tends to nitpick. So, take my opinion with a grain of salt, if you will. But essentially, for those of you who have not seen it, spoiler alert, we're going to be going full-fledged spoilers tonight. But essentially, it's the continuation of the Adventures of the Guardians, which makes it a very different style of show, or movie, if you will. To me, it felt like a show because you're just going on all kinds of different adventures and seeing where everybody's going. But basically, these guys have been together for a while now. They're kind of like their own space Avengers, if you will. Everybody has their own, certain thing that makes them who they are, and they have gone past the getting to know you phase that you see in Guardians Volume 1. Everybody is kind of, feeling each other out. They're getting to know each other a little bit. They're seeing, their different characteristics, what makes them them. Now that we know that Peter Quill is kind of the de facto leader and the adventurous one, we know that Gamora is the assassin. We know that Drax is the weapons guy that gets into things head first. And he does that like within the first 5 minutes of the film, jumping into that monster's mouth and stabbing it from the inside out. Like, we know these things about these characters now. But this movie takes an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper. One of the great mysteries of the first movie was Peter's parentage, Star-Lord's parentage.
Yep.
And you saw his mom at the beginning of the film, and you saw that she died of cancer. And in this movie, you have the opportunity to, start out by watching his adventures. They go with one of those types of movie openers where it's kind of important, but it's not super important, but it kind of gives you a taste of some of the adventures to come. And then the big plot starts to unravel where, they are being hunted down for thieving from the people that hired them to do the job in the first place. And the Sovereign actually used some really cool technology to try and hunt them down, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But as they are on the run, who should show up but Star-Lord's dad? He basically, he wipes them all out in a very impressive fashion, and then they end up meeting after a crash landing on a planet, and you start to find out more and more about Peter's background and his character, and then you're watching the reactions of everybody else throughout the course of the movie, seeing how Rocket reacts to families and being reunited with people, seeing how characters that were, somewhat lesser in the previous film take on a very prominent role, the way Yondu did. And then you're also seeing, the family ties that are, still very loose, but they're trying to connect them between Nebula and Gamora. So above anything else, the more I think about it, this is very much a family film. It's a movie about family. And it can be, long lost parents. It can be about estranged siblings. It can be about step parents or foster parents. And it can also be about family basically coming from anywhere and them being the ones that you don't necessarily are born into, but they're the ones that you choose to be with. And kind of by the end of the movie, we realize that these Guardians are a family. They're not just friends. They're not just colleagues. They are a family. They are a family that they chose to be together with. And watching them work together towards the end of the movie was very satisfying in my mind. And and it was just really interesting to see how all those different family dynamics played off of each other, because as you go deeper into the film, you realize that sometimes the family that you're born into, the way Peter was with Ego, may not exactly be the best family situation to be put into.
So that is an intriguing point. Yeah, thank you, Zach. And what I find interesting is that, that Star-Lord. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Is his real name Peter?
Peter Quill. Peter Quill.
Peter,
yes,
yeah.
Sir.
And it's interesting. You point out the main idea, or one of the main ideas, is what is family.
Mm-hmm.
From the audience's perspective, especially if you saw the volume 1, you realize, okay, yeah, the Guardians, they've become a closely knit group. Kind of. I mean, they still have their issues, but that's the way families are. Right. So it's interesting seeing Peter's dad and him finding out the history of his family and just the way that these plot details reveal themselves, and it creates an interesting point of what is family, that it's not as clear cut as it's just out of who birthed you.
Right.
It's a little more complicated than that. Maybe you've grown so close with other types of people that your definition of family is a little bit different than, say, the average person.
Right.
So that is a key point that I find very fascinating.
And I like the way that they kind of go in like a Star Trek manner, if you will. And if anybody's seen Star Trek Beyond, you kind of know what I'm talking about, where you have these certain moments where you break up the characters a little bit, and you're putting them in situations where they're only with one or two people, where they're only doing this, they're only doing that. Yeah. And so like it was Chekhov with Captain Kirk. And then you also had Scotty with Jayla, and characters like that. They're going off by their lonesome. They're doing their part of the story, and then when the big epic final battle happens, everybody is pushed back together again. They essentially do that in Guardians 2 as well, and it leaves they leave Rocket and Groot with the ship, I believe, after it crash lands, and then.
Okay,
Peter,
yeah, you are right. Yes, yeah.
Peter and Gamora and Drax leave with Ego and Mantis, and they all go back to Ego's planet to learn about Peter's origin story. And then from there, there's even more, splitting up of characters where, Drax and Gamora are kind of off doing their own thing, and then Peter and his dad are off doing their own thing. And as the movie continues to unravel and as the mystery continues to unravel, more and more starts to happen, leading you to realize, hey, these guys aren't safe. And that was probably one of the more fun elements of the movie to me, not that the whole movie wasn't great. Believe me, there were a lot of things that are definitely praiseworthy about this film. But one thing that I really enjoyed was being able to see everybody's reactions and perspectives as everybody starts to recognize that their situation isn't the best. Because Rocket and Yondu end up prisoners, and then Gamora ends up fighting with Nebula, and Drax ends up realizing via Mantis that Ego is not who he says he is, and now everybody realizes they have to get to Peter. So as the I don't know what you call it, the bad moments start to increase, and as the tension starts to rise, everybody starts to gravitate back together again. And I think that's another mark of family, like I was talking about earlier.
In times of crisis, family comes together to fight the threat.
Exactly. Family is there for you. And that was really, really heartwarming to see that everybody was able to work past their differences. Everybody was able to use their gifts and their talents, and they were able to apply them appropriately in order to defeat the bad guy, which I thought was great.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. That kind of that sort of kind of reminds me of The Empire Strikes Back, obviously from Star Wars.
I can see that. I can
just in that there's the group
the separation.
Separated by conflict or because of research for some people, and a lot of deep stuff is learned, like what Luke learns about the Force and his family and all. But that's one of the most interesting things about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is how they do that, how they try to shake it up and whatnot. And we've mentioned it throughout the episodes so far. But let's analyze some of the key characters that make up this jolly plot.
Sure.
You've mentioned it before, Zach, that we know these characters in Volume 1. We learned about them there. When you're watching the movie, it's expected that you kind of know, you have some sort of semblance of who they are.
You have a general idea. Even if you haven't seen Volume 1, they still give off their aura, their general impressions of who they are, and you can kind of tell, who the leader is. You can kind of tell who... who's the class clown. You can kind of tell who's the muscle just by looking at them to a certain degree. And so, you can have a general semblance of it without necessarily having to see the first one. But honestly, the character establishment and character development that they did in the first movie really, really adds to the things that they incorporate into this second film. I got to give them a lot of credit for that.
So Zach, what do you think of the characters and the way that they interacted with each other during the movie? Like for example, I was intrigued by how they conveyed Gamora and Peter and Star-Lord. How they interacted with each other resulted in conflicting feelings and like some sort of argument occurs and conflict and whatnot. That is of course interrupted by some sort of chaos within Peter's dad, of course. But
that tends to happen in action movies. As soon as you think somebody's going to be having a moment, and you're like, oh, kiss, 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 then bam, there's some big explosion that happens in the background, and you're like, well, there goes that moment, and that happens.
But I find that. I apologize, Zach.
No, it's okay. I was just saying it does happen a couple of times, but not in an exaggerated manner in this film, I guess.
Yeah, of course. And I'm fascinated by how Peter and Gamora are because it's like Gamora is going through a life crisis. For a certain period of time, they had custody of Gamora's sister. Do you remember her name, Zach?
Nebula,
thank you. And she's, well, in the first half of the movie, she's pretty. She's one of the bad people. She seemed like a bad guy, not very good intentions. So it was interesting seeing Gamora receive flirting from Peter, and then all of a sudden she has to go down there and yell at her sister that she really hates. I mean, I feel really bad for Gamora. She's going through a rough time.
his timing just wasn't the best. And that's something that's pretty typical of Peter Quill, let's be honest. Chris Pratt is one of the kings at creating awkward situations. Like if you watch him in Parks and Rec and you watch him, playing games on Ellen, did you see that video of him playing that game where you're supposed to like say a phrase, but you got that mouthpiece and you're trying to like say a phrase, the other person has to guess it?
No, give me some context, Zach.
Oh, it was so funny because he I don't even know what that game is called. I really don't. I've never played it before because I've got teeth issues, and so I don't play those kinds of things that like stretch my jaw. But you put that piece of plastic in your mouth, and it like stretches your lips to where you can't close them, and then you have to say certain phrases, and you can't close your lips, and it sounds more like this. And he's playing that game with Ellen, and one of the phrases is like platypuses can't walk sideways, or something like that. And she guesses that one pretty easily. But then there's one where he says, I'm going to bump you. But bump is created, the word bump is created when you're pressing your two lips together in the front. He can't form the letter B, and so it sounds like he's saying the letter H. And so when he's got the mouthpiece open like this, he's like, I'm going to hunt you. And everybody was like, you're going to do what to who? So Chris Pratt, I got to give him props more than anything. Going back to the context of the movie, he does a very, very good job at making regular situations awkward. From trying to put some sort of moves on Gamora to telling Ellen DeGeneres that he's going to hump her. I really don't think that's what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
And then if you've watched Passengers, he is so awkward in that movie as well. So I really think more than anything, yes, it's good writing, but Chris Pratt is just very, very good at making situations more awkward than they need to be. And it doesn't really help his case or help matters that much that he is playing the straight man off of Drax. Drax is the one that is even more socially awkward than he is. And so he'll be saying things like, you just need to find someone weak and pathetic like you. And then he'll be saying things like, what did he say in the pod? I think he said something to the effect of, she just told everyone your deepest, darkest secrets. The thing that you see in the trailer. Like, Peter's already embarrassed. He's trying to cover up the fact that he has feelings for Gamora. He's like, yeah, I do feel just this general unselfish love for people. And she's like, no, you want her. And Drax just busts out laughing. So
it's like, oh, it's a deepest, darkest secret reveal.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so he's already being awkward because he's like, no, that's not true. Like, that's awkward in itself. But then to have it compounded by 10, 15, 20 times with Drax overemphasizing things and being completely socially oblivious, it just makes Peter's situations that much more awkward. So he is like the space king of socially awkward. And you see that in several occasions on this film, especially when he's trying to put the moves on Gamora while she's dealing with family issues. Can you imagine if that happened to you? Like, you've got a family situation that you're trying to deal with, and somebody just comes up and is trying to flirt with you. I'm like, excuse me, I don't have time for this. I gotta go do a thing. My brother's sick. I've got to get him some groceries. And they're like, so you want to go out after? Like, no, don't do that to me. So the character dynamic between those two is very interesting because at times I feel like he's trying to make Gamora into something she's not. Especially in the scene where they're on the planet and he's like letting her listen to his music again and he's trying to get her to dance. When Drax had very specifically said there are people who dance and people who don't dance. And Gamora strikes me as one of those people that doesn't dance. And just a little bit here, it kind of breaks the social stigma of, meeting people where they are and accepting them for who they are. Because in that moment, I really felt like Peter was trying to make Gamora into somebody that she's not. And yet, at the end of the movie, they're still on good terms, which I found interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a dynamic that they bring in very early, that he's trying to make her something that she's not, with the comment about how he uses guns and she really...
And then she uses guns. You're right. I'd almost forgotten that. You're right. So yeah, he's accepting, but it's almost like he's accepting as long as you conform to what I expect you to be. And that I find really, really weird, because that's really not, I don't know, that's not healthy, for one thing. And that's not the way that society is usually kind of perpetuating the social stigmas right now. Usually it's like, oh, don't shame me because I colored my hair. Don't shame me because I have this sexual orientation. Don't shame me because I am this kind of weight. And I don't necessarily think that he's shaming her exactly, but to a certain degree, it feels like he's trying to get her to conform to being somebody that she isn't. And that's just not usually what you see in movies like this. Now, I will say, the one interaction that I found very interesting and borderline weird, and you guys can extrapolate on this all you want, but what did you guys make of the bond that was being shared between Rocket and Yondu while they were on the ship?
Oh. I thought that you were going in a completely different direction with that. I actually liked it, because I like Bradley Cooper, I like Michael Rooker, and they didn't really have that many interactions in Volume 1. And I feel like that they have a really good dynamic in this one.
Yeah. Fluff, what about you?
Oh, man, I just like the fact that Yondu had more of a great role in this film. Sorry, it's mildly off topic, but Yondu, I like that character. They developed a lot out of that character in this film.
He did deserve more screen time, and the fact that they gave it to him was great. I agree.
I think it was either you, Zach, or Ben Hart who posted on Facebook saying that the first movie is just so different because of what we learned about Yondu. Like you can watch it in a different light because of it, and I like Yondu's what's it called? The little crap. His, you know what I mean, right? His weapon, the thing he whistles, and the arrow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to call it. I've always just called it his whistle arrow.
Yeah, it's whistle arrow. They used that quite a bit in the movie, and I thought that was so jolly. And it just, man, I just liked it that they had Yondu in it. Another blue guy, yeah. But yeah. I do like it that him and Rocket that they developed their relationship or friendship or whatever. It improved.
See, that's what I'm getting at.
It made the ending be more emotional.
See, that's what I'm getting at. You can't really describe the bond that they've got. You just called it either a friendship or a relationship. For a brief moment there, when they're yelling at each other and they're like, I know you, boy, because I am you. Like that moment where they both kind of realize that they're from like a similar situation. They've both had like similar terrible upbringings, and they're both confused about their identity and who they are, and yet they both seem to relate to one another. Usually when that kind of bonding goes to that kind of level, there's usually some sort of a kiss that happens after it. I'm just saying. Now, yeah. I praise them for not going that far, but honestly, people have been complaining more about the brief, awkward pause that happens in Beauty and the Beast. And honest to God, I thought that was more of a homosexual moment than the thing that happened in Beauty and the Beast. I'm just putting that out there. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. You can chastise me all you want, but
It's a bromance.
maybe I'm looking too far into it. That's a possibility. I tend to do that. Like I said at the top of the show, I tend to overanalyze things sometimes. But it was like, I don't know. It just had this feeling to it, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm not criticizing it at all. I'm just saying that is what it looked like to me. That is what it seemed like to me. And I really wasn't expecting them to go that route. I really wasn't. And the things that they did do were pretty awesome. Because let me tell you, the scene where Rocket and Yondu break out of the brig and then come a little bit closer by Jay and the Americans start to play in the background, and he is sending that whistle flying all over the ship and just killing every mutineer possible. I mean, I got chills. And part of it was because I'd been listening to the soundtrack so much, and I was just really looking forward to where they were going to be playing Come a Little Bit Closer by Jay and the Americans. And then when they did start playing it, and it happened during that moment in the film, like, honestly, that was probably one of my favorite moments in the whole film.
Same here. Again, I feel like that it was more of a bromance, but again, I didn't analyze it as far as you did.
Well, and I've only seen it one time, so it's all their initial impressions kind of thing. I'm planning on seeing it a second time before we do IPC. I need to figure out what time I'm going to do that, but I do plan on seeing it another time, so I'll be able to get a second glance at it and be able to see everything that's going on in this film, because there's a lot of really cool moments and really cool adventures. You know how they have that app where you download it and they tell you what scene is okay for you to get up and go to the bathroom for, and then you come back and you feel like you didn't miss a whole lot?
Didn't know that was a thing.
That's a thing, actually, and I'm kind of surprised by it. But people will go to screenings and will see the movie like on Thursday night or whatever, and they will try and pick out the moments when they feel it is most appropriate for people to get up and go to the bathroom. And you can like check the movies on the app online. And so, like, let's say for example, Captain America: Civil War. Let's use that as an example. The scene right after they all get captured, basically,
Yeah.
and they're going to the prison. I think that was one of the moments where they're like, okay, you've got about 3 minutes here, 3 or 4 minutes before something else happens. This would be a good restroom break. Or maybe The Force Awakens, where, you know, Rey is being interrogated by Kylo Ren. Maybe not the best time to get up and go see it or to leave, but not exactly something that will keep you from understanding everything else that's going on in the movie. So when you're looking at this one, it's honestly hard to come up with what point in time would be appropriate to place something like that, because there's just so many awesome things happening in this movie. I would venture a guess that maybe the app would tell you as soon as they land on Ego's planet, because right then everything is just kind of happy and there's, you know, sing-song going on in the background, and there's bubbles and people are smiling and laughing. And maybe
you kind of miss like the explanation. You
Yeah.
miss it.
You might miss it. Okay, I see your point then. Then what about when they're playing Frazzle Ball? When they're learning how to like harness the powers and they end up just playing catch with one another. Like, that was kind of iffy for me. I was like 50-50 on that. I was like, okay, that's kind of cute because he's bonding with his dad and they're doing planet things. Like, that's kind of cool. You're learning how he can harness his powers. But I also saw the inevitable. I saw the end game coming where you're not actually going to be able to leave this planet alive. I saw that coming. And so as the movie continued to progress, I was like, okay, something's got to give. Either this planet is going to have to be destroyed or one of the main characters is going to have to die. And I just don't see a main character like Gamora getting killed off in this film. So the other thing is going to be the only other possibility. which means if Peter does get off this planet alive, he's never going to be able to return, and he's never going to be able to harness these powers appropriately again. So seeing him play lightning ball, or whatever it is you want to call it, it just really didn't do a whole lot for me, because I knew sooner or later he wasn't ever going to get to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that would be the time to go to the restroom, but everything else is just so fun. And it's so interesting, like, going back to Yondu's character. You see Sylvester Stallone show up kind of towards the first third of this film. And his character excommunicates Yondu. He excommunicates those portions of the Ravagers for shipping people. You're not supposed to do that. That goes against the Code of the Brethren sent down by Bartholomew. Oh no, that's Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm sorry. But you've got that code that he's been dishonoring by delivering kids to Ego. He's been shipping kids to Ego to try and figure out if any of them are going to, be viable helpers in this endeavor to spread his, I don't know, what do you want to call it? His flowers?
Himself, I guess.
Himself, yeah.
That doesn't sound right, but
he wants to spread his essence. It's kind of hard to describe with words. It's a very visually oriented thing. But in essence, Ego has basically planted little pocket versions of himself on all these other planets. And he has been creating offspring in all these different planets, hoping that somebody would be genetically compatible to help him spread his influence to the rest of the galaxy. That is, the ultimate end game that's happening. He wants to basically take over the galaxy, and that's why the Guardians of the Galaxy have to save it again. And Peter is the only one that has been proven to be genetically compatible. All the other offspring that he has visited, all the other kids that Yondu has shipped to him, have died in the process. And I find it really interesting. Yeah, it's weird.
It is a little weird, because I find it weird when media does that, where they just all of a sudden really fast they just overcomplicate with this big old end game, like, oh, look at all these things we never knew before. When I watched it when I watched the movie a few days ago, I felt like it was coming too fast, like I didn't have enough time to process that.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of media tend to do that, where they just throw it in your face and just move on, move to the next part. And I just think that's weird. They never really had a full reaction. I didn't think there was a sufficient reaction from Peter, from Star-Lord, as to the fact that he has other step siblings or whatever.
He's got a galaxy of step siblings, essentially.
God.
Yeah, I don't think they really focused on that as much.
They focused more on him and his mother.
Yes. And I think that's appropriate, because we saw his mom die in the first movie. I think it's more heart-wrenching, to be honest, to hear Ego say, it's a pity that I had to put that brain tumor in her, rather than say, it's a pity you didn't get a chance to meet all of your step siblings that you didn't know existed until 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? If you want to send somebody on a feels trip, let them know that this guy just killed the mom that gave him those 2 awesome mix volumes that he's been listening to for the last 2 films. Let the audience know that this guy is responsible for the one good thing that he had going in his life being taken away from him, and him having to be swept up into the galaxy that he's been a part of for the last 30 years. I think, honestly, that's probably a little bit more, I don't know, feels train-ish. I don't know how to...
more impactful.
That's a good word for it. It's a lot more impactful for him to find that out than for him to find out he's got all these step siblings. Because honestly, Peter Quill doesn't strike me as the type that is going to scour the galaxy trying to find somebody else that is half planet. But he would be the kind of person that would go to the ends of the earth or the ends of the galaxy to avenge his mother's death.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a fair point. I apologize for trying to argue otherwise.
No. This is not an argument. I hope you don't see it as that. It's just my perspective. It's just a discussion trying to analyze what we have seen and what we haven't seen in the film. What you saw was step siblings, and that is a very interesting point. It's one that I really hadn't considered because obviously Yondu hadn't brought in everybody and then saved Peter for last. Peter was just next on the list.
Yeah.
So it is feasible that there are other step siblings out there that are half planet the same way he is and may have the same powers. It was just that Peter was the first one to be genetically compatible, but that doesn't necessarily make him the only one.
I didn't think that there was any more alive.
Well, again, this is first impressions.
Yeah.
It's speculation and it's first impressions. I don't remember the exact wording because if I remember correctly, he had just been saying everybody up until now had not been compatible. They died in the process.
Yes, until Peter.
Until Peter came along, until Ego found out that, a Terran was able to hold an Infinity Stone and not get washed away from it. That meant that he probably had some compatibility to him.
Yeah, that's another thing. I like it that they made that reference to the Infinity Stone.
Yes, very much needed. Because if you don't have an actual Infinity Stone like you do in Doctor Strange, you at least have to make reference to one.
Yeah.
And yes, I remember Thanos was also mentioned by, I think it was Gamora.
And Nebula at some point.
Yeah. Okay, it was Nebula, yes. And I just, man, counting down to Infinity War, man, getting hyped. I just love it. Making references, I love it. Sorry.
I'm really, you know what? I'll wait until we're in full on spoilers, and unless we want to go the route of the emotional part of this movie.
Go ahead. I mean, we had the spoiler warning at the beginning of the show.
I mean, we've been spoiler filled all this time, so I mean, we might as well.
When I was coughing. Yeah, but I'm really wondering because I know that speculation right now is that Thanos may resurrect a hero or someone. I'm wondering if that hero will be Yondu.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's
now blown.
I would not be opposed to that because, like I said, I really loved Yondu. I loved what he was able to accomplish. I loved the line that he said. You watch the first one and you get chills from Peter saying something like, "You said it yourself, bitch. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy." And then when you think epic lines can't be topped, you have Yondu rescuing Peter, and he said, he may have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh. And again, going back to the concept of family, Yondu was like his adoptive father. And did you see Peter have a memorial for Ego? Did you see him, staring out at the window, mourning the loss of his father? No. But he had some very powerful words to say about Yondu's death. And that, again, just made me realize, his family may not have been something that he chose. Yondu kind of kidnapped him or threatened to eat him, that kind of thing. But Yondu was family. Yondu was family more than Ego could ever have hoped to have been.
He was more of a father than Ego. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought that was an interesting way. When Ego died, you think of it as it's the bad guy's down, no more bad guy. He's just evil. But when Yondu died, it was emotional. It was deep. You felt through these characters they had an emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also find that interesting that they did it like that. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, you were mentioning Yay for Blue People earlier. Honestly, I felt like Yondu and Nebula had two of the better story arcs in this movie.
Yeah.
I really felt like I really felt like Yondu had a fantastic story arc, and I felt like Nebula's was really good, mostly from a comics perspective. Because if you've read the Infinity Gauntlet comic, there are moments where Nebula plays a very, very critical role. And at the end of Guardians 1, it kind of felt like, oh, she's a side piece, and she's a side piece that disappeared. Maybe she'll come back. And then she shows up in the second movie, and you're like, oh, she's here. She's going to be another side piece, blah, blah, blah. But the bond that she's building with Gamora, trying to reestablish that sisterhood, the realization that she was physically and emotionally and mentally abused by Thanos, she's not trying to serve Thanos. She is out to kill him now. She has got this wrath to her now, and makes her a very intimidating presence in the future. I think she could play a pretty big role in Infinity War when it rolls around. Maybe not to the extent that she has in the comics, but I think they are setting her character up to be able to do a lot more in future films.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that completely, that she will most likely be playing a bigger role. I'm not sure. I'm gonna guess that she's probably confirmed for Infinity War.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Or maybe the sequel to Infinity War.
Yeah.
I would think she is. I would definitely expect her for Guardians 3 at least. And I was pretty excited when James Gunn made the announcement that he is going to be directing Volume 3.
Volume 3 is a thing, guys! Holy crap!
Volume 3 is officially a thing. And one of these days, I am going to try and come up with like my own Awesome Mix Volume 3.
Oh.
And maybe make some ideas or some suggestions on what they need to use for their next album. Because based on what they have used, I can kind of guess on what they might use. It's very, I don't know how to describe it, Jeff. You're a music major, so you can kind of relate to this. Based on it's a process of elimination more than anything now. And I'll try and talk about this more on IPC on Friday. But essentially, you have to look at what songs they've used and what artists they've used and recognize that they're not going to be using them in Volume 3. There were no repeats between Volume 1 and Volume 2. Am I right? There were no artist repeats. They used all completely new artists and completely new music.
Yes.
So, it's safe to assume that they're going to try and do that for Volume 3 as well. And then there's some other elements and some other concepts that I'm going to try and integrate in there. But you have to also take out things that they've used in other trailers. Look at Led Zeppelin that they used for the Thor Ragnarok trailer. You know, you can't use Led Zeppelin now because it's associated with Thor. Look at the Bohemian Rhapsody. They used that on Suicide Squad. You can't use the same music that your competitors are using. So there's like a science to figuring out what it is. And I'm going to plan on coming up with at least a half an album in time for Friday's episode, talking about what I think Volume 3 should look like.
They can't use other songs by the artists. It's silly.
Well, but look at what they've done so far. Like, if they wanted to, they could have used ELO in both, but they only used them in Volume 2. If they wanted to continue using Norman Greenbaum, they could have, but they didn't put him in Volume 2. If they wanted to use, let me think. I'm trying to think. What is one of the other ones that they used? If they wanted to use Blue Sweet again, they could have. But then that takes away from the effect of what Hooked on a Feeling does to people from Volume 1. If you wanted to use, if you wanted to put Jay and the Americans in Volume 1, then all of a sudden it's not as big a deal to hear Come a Little Bit Closer in Volume 2. So I would think that that's what they would do. I could be wrong. I would imagine that they're going to probably throw one in there just to kind of mess with us a little bit. But for the most part, for the most part, it strikes me that they are using completely different songs of completely different artists every time.
It does make it more fun to select the music, yeah.
Well, and it adds to the mystery too, because everybody's wondering, what are they going to use? What are they going to use? What are they going to use? But now that we've got 2 volumes out, I feel like there's a chance that I could come up with some pretty interesting ideas on what they could use. Because I'm going to be honest, predominantly my music selection is from the 60s through 80s. I listen to the likes of ELO, of REO Speedwagon, Bon Jovi, the Beatles, Michael Jackson. You know, I listen to those kinds of artists. And I can kind of tell, you know, which ones are popular, which ones are not as popular, a little bit lesser known, but would still be appropriate, and which ones have been used by competitors. And by figuring out those different pieces of the scenarios, I may be able to come up with something that they could use for Volume 3. Does it mean they're going to use it? No. Does it mean it's fun to try and figure it out? Sure. And I think there's a BuzzFeed quiz out there. I took it the other day that's like, what 80s soundtrack gives you your Guardians of the Galaxy character? And you go through it and you pick like Madonna music, and you pick Michael Jackson music, and you pick one-hit wonders, and you pick, you know, there's one point where you pick a song that you've never even heard of before. It's just like, yeah, just pick a song. And I'm like, okay. And then after you pick all of those, it tells you what your Guardians character is. And you guys want to know what I got? I got Groot. I am Groot. A friend of mine got Nebula. Somebody else got Drax. Somebody else got Star-Lord. So it's all in good fun. If you guys are into BuzzFeed quizzes, that's one I would definitely recommend. But while we're on that subject, can we just talk about the music and the placement of it in this film? Because
say that it's more sparse than Volume 1.
Does it mean that it's less quality, though?
No, not necessarily.
Because I will agree with you. I was really expecting Wham Bam Shangalang to be used during like a big fight scene or something. Because that whole wham bam sounds like something you would use when you're throwing punches or something like that. And to hear it playing like on the speakers on the ship in the background during one of the fight scenes, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of sad. That's kind of disappointing. But then on the flip side, instead of having the big climactic fight scene music that you do in Guardians Volume 1, when they get into their big fight between Peter and Ego, in the background you start hearing The Chain by Fleetwood Mac instead of a musical score. And I loved it. I loved it so much. That the song Brandy being used as a very big part of the plot in this movie. And then Jay and the Americans Come a Little Bit Closer were 3 moments that I thought were very, very well timed when it came to using the oldies music.
Yeah, what'd you think, Eric? What'd you think of the musical timing?
Well, I think you did say that it was rather sparse, but
oh yeah, sorry, I'm tired. I'm forgetting stuff sometimes, but
no, it's okay. But what do you mean though by sparse, Eric? Aside from Wham Bam Shangalang, can you give us some examples of what the sparsity looked like in this film?
I mean, with Volume 1, you had a bunch. Sorry. You had a bunch more musical cues than Volume 2, basically. That
do musical cues, do you mean by like scene transitions or things happening within the movie, or okay, I would say
there is a moment. I'll say a moment that I did like where the music came in, and that was the intro to the movie. It was a big old battle that the Guardians were having, and I thought it was so cool when the intro when they show the opening credits of the main cast members. You have a big old battle going on in the background, and you have Baby Groot just being all jolly, just walking around all jolly like, and just the music. He's just playing music. Do you remember the song name, Zach?
Mr. Blue Sky by the Electric Light Orchestra.
And I just thought it was so cool that I think the first film did this as well, is that like they also play the songs in the movie. It's not like obviously you hear it on the main speaker like it's background noise, but then you also hear like it's actually coming from certain speakers, like a character's listening to this tune. And in these opening credits, that was what Baby Groot was doing, and I thought that was so jolly. So I loved that musical usage there.
Yeah. I would liken it to the opening for Deadpool, which is another really great opening.
I can see that.
I have not seen Deadpool. Give me some context.
It starts
I only saw it like 2 weeks ago, Fluff, so don't feel bad.
Yeah. That's really surprising. Yeah, so the beginning of Deadpool is just like a shot of like an SUV and what's the song?
Oh, I don't know my Deadpool soundtrack as well as I know my Guardian soundtrack. Sorry.
It's like one of the only songs that I don't know. Either way, it's one of the songs in the Deadpool soundtrack. There you go. And it shows a bunch of things that he probably wrote down.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was like directed by a tool or something like that, right? And, like it doesn't give the director's actual name. It's very snarky, very sarcastic, and it's funny because I remembered I was looking down eating, I think it was my Chipotle bowl. Like I was just eating dinner. And I looked down to eat my food because I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna have this music and we're gonna have these different little intro things, blah blah blah. And then I look up and it said that it was directed by a tool, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're being funny right now, and I'm missing it. And that's kind of when I got locked in with Deadpool, because I was like, oh my gosh, I need to pay attention to everything that's going on in this movie, or I'm going to miss something. And Guardians is kind of the same way, because they hook you in by showing you the different character names and stuff, but they also hook you in with really good music, and they hook you in with a fight scene. And it keeps you engaged and keeps you watching what's going on and enjoying what's going on while they're getting through the stuff that they have to get through, which is very creative on their part, and has always been something that they've done very well. They did it with Come and Get Your Love by Redbone at the beginning of the last movie, and then to use this one while they're fighting a giant monster of some sorts. Very, very creative.
And you just have Baby Groot dancing along, just having a fun time.
I mean, we could have an entire movie. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 could have been just Baby Groot dancing to the soundtrack, and people would have paid to go see it. Let's be honest.
I'd take it a step further, like the entire movie just in Baby Groot's eyes. Or
oh wow! Rather. Watch it from Baby Groot POV. Wow.
Either that, or just have the entire movie focus on Baby Groot.
I mean, didn't it already though? Come on.
Yeah, that's another thing. I really love Baby Groot, and he's so cute.
Okay, that's another element of family. We keep going back to family. Did anybody else notice how they were basically all being Baby Groot's parents at one point in the movie?
Yes. Even Yondu at a certain point when he's
Yondu had a time where he's trying to coach him and teach him to go and fetch his fin for him. We've got the scene where Rocket is obviously trying to take care of him and be his instructor and give him like the different lessons and stuff. And you have Gamora telling Groot to get out of the way and get to safety during the beginning of the movie. And then one of the end credit scenes is Peter walking into Groot's room telling him to clean it up. So, like, they're almost like parenting by committee. And it's like there's no one particular father, but they're all helping keep this little tree sapling character safe. And I thought it was so heartwarming. I really, really liked it. I keep using the word heartwarming, and Fluff, you keep using jolly. By the end of this, it's going to be a Christmas movie.
Oh my God.
Baby Groot is the Christmas tree. It's all about a giant Christmas tree, and everybody's keeping Baby Groot safe because they want to save Christmas.
Yeah.
Speaking of, man, Baby Groot. What did you all think of his role in the movie? I thought it was rather interesting, because in the first movie, when he was big, like he actually had use, and now it seems like Baby Groot is a comic relief, and it's interesting seeing it like that. What did you guys think of Baby Groot?
He was really cute. I liked it.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say, I felt like it was needed to a certain degree, because a lot of the other stuff is situational comedy, but some of the stuff that you see from Baby Groot is just adorable comedy. And so to kind of throw that monkey wrench into the mix and continue to add a few laughs here and there was pretty nice. Whenever I watched him going and getting those different articles for Yondu while they were in the jail cell, I kept thinking of The Rescuers Down Under. Have you guys seen that movie? It's a Disney movie, kind of old. Oh man, that's such a classic. How have neither of you guys seen that one?
Because I'm not a classic.
Fair enough. I'm so old school. I watch the old school movies. I watch old school TV shows like the Dick Van Dyke Show and the Andy Griffith Show, and then I watch older Disney movies like Rescuers Down Under, apparently. But anyways, there's this one scene where all these animals are locked up by a poacher, and the one critter that gets out is like this lizard, and he's just very ditzy, very clumsy, and very dumb. And they're trying to get the keys to be able to rescue everyone else, and he keeps doing the wrong thing. He keeps trying to use his tail to open the lock, and then he steps on like a very flat board in order to get the keys. And then once he finally gets the keys, he's making a lot of noise with it, and it draws the attention of the guard. And it's like every time he's trying to do something right to set them free, he ends up doing something wrong. But it was done in like a comedic way, I guess.
Yeah.
Similar to what we see with Groot is what I'm getting at.
I have actually seen this movie. Though I don't remember anything from it, but I've definitely seen some of this movie.
It's a cute movie. I would recommend it to people.
So
you gotta see the first one though, because there's a lot of like jokes and stuff that tie into the second one.
So guys, I just realized something that it's kind of related to the subject. That there was a piece of news that came out this morning that features Baby Groot. It's the announcement that there is a new Marvel video game coming called Lego Marvel Superheroes 2.
Oh yeah, I heard about this.
And it had like a short 15-second teaser that had a cute little Lego version of Baby Groot.
Oh, so you can play as Lego Baby Groot.
Yeah.
Oh.
The trailer basically just briefly showed Baby Groot like he was in the opening scene of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And I thought that was so great to see him just running around. Baby Groot.
Baby Groot. I am Groot.
And also, Eric, you can be excited for a new Lego game coming out.
Mm-hmm. I can 100% that game too.
Oh man, I've got several Lego games that I have not finished yet, just because of school and work obligations. I just haven't had a whole lot of time. But
I 100%ed Lego Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
That's one that I've got, and I haven't finished it yet. I've got Lego Star Wars: The Force Awakens. I've got Lego Jurassic World, and then I've got
that I 100% it.
And then I've got the Lego Marvel Superheroes 1 for the PS4. It's on my other game system. So I've got a lot of Lego stuff to play, but then I also, on an impulse buy, decided to get Skyrim. and I kind of just want to play Skyrim all summer. So we'll have to figure
That's
out
gonna take a while, buddy.
where my priorities lie. We'll find out.
That's gonna take a while. But so let's move on to this other part of the Guardians of the Galaxy discussion. Is that so? As Zach mentioned earlier in the podcast, James Gunn confirmed that there will be a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So, with that said, what do you all think are the possibilities that this sequel will explore? Like, what will they do? What do you predict or think that James Gunn will do when creating the story of Volume 3? What can they do with these characters?
So far, I think it's like one of the only like real big confirmed movies that are coming out after Infinity War, and whatever follows that. So, I would say that it's going to deal with a lot of post Infinity War and its sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yondu will be reincarnated, confirmed.
Yep. By me.
Oh man, I would like to see that. I tend to agree with you, Eric. I think that's probably where we're going to have to hedge our bets on. Is we're going to have to make our speculation based on what happens in the Infinity War, because Infinity War is still very speculatory as well.
Yeah, I'm really happy that it's almost confirmed, really, that Adam Warlock is going to be in the next one. Adam Warlock is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I mean, because of what we saw in one of the 5 post-credit scenes in this movie.
Yeah, I still can't believe that.
Jeez Louise. But then the last one with Stan Lee, did you guys like that one or did you not like that one?
I like that one because I like seeing the Watchers, which...
Man, I played the video game Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and it featured Uatu, the Watcher, and it opened my mind to this story and the way the Watchers are, and I find it so fascinating that I think it's a great idea to have Stan Lee in every movie to watch over all these important pivotal events in both the 20th Century Fox Marvel Universe and the MCU. So I think that was an amazing thing. And they had some comic relief of Stan Lee. I thought that was very funny too.
Yeah, we got to see him twice in one movie, which is surprising.
Man, double dose of Stan Lee. Who'd have thunk it, man?
Yeah, Stan Lee cameo, always a great part of the movies.
What do you think they'll do with that in future movies? The Watcher.
I don't know.
The Watchers might have a big role in Infinity War, you never know.
Yeah, probably. I would argue that Uatu may be in a future Marvel movie. Perhaps. You never know.
As previously said, the possibilities are endless.
Mm-hmm.
Man. So yeah, so let's get to the reactions and what we thought of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I'll start this one. I was impressed. I was entertained by the movie. I don't usually put expectations on a movie, so I wasn't sure what to expect, obviously. But I came out of there with satisfaction and a feeling of jolliness, man. It got me really happy and excited, and I had a super fun time watching that movie. I did feel that it was more emotional. It was more emotional than I thought it would be. And I thought that was interesting, that despite there were a lot of happy, funny moments in the film, that there were some moments where like wow, that's some deep stuff going on. Like holy crap, Yondu died. Oh my god. Like they're tugging at our heartstrings with Gamora and Star-Lord, and like, oh my gosh. It's so many. It was pretty emotional. So I was shocked about that. What do the rest of you think about the movie?
I would say that overall it's a good sequel, and which the general consensus with people is that sequels are never as good as the original. I would say that this is...
That is false. Look at The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. I wouldn't
or Arkham
say...
City, or Mass Effect 2.
Or possibly Battlefront 2. And the original Battlefront 2.
Oh yeah, the PS2 Battlefront 2, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he was also referring to the new one coming out. It'll probably be better than the first one. Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah, I would say that this is a good sequel. It's not worse than the original, but I would say that the original still has a good place in my heart. And music's still good. Wish that they had it more prevalent in the movie itself, though. Yeah, I would still say that this is a great movie to watch. Better than Iron Man 2.
Oh.
Yeah. But not as good as Winter Soldier.
Dang.
Yeah. There you go.
Man, you're using some fighting words there comparing it to Iron Man 2. Because I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. You guys might not want to hear my opinion on anything else after I say this.
Leave Zach by himself now.
Just mute Zach's mic and then he won't get to say anything. This is not related to Guardians Volume 2, but after watching the trilogy 3 times, I watched them 1, 2, 3, and then I took a break, and then 1, 2, 3, and then I was showing them to some friends, and we went 1, 2, 3. After going through all 3 Iron Man films in succession like that 3 times, I still enjoy Iron Man 2 the most.
Really?
And there are certain elements, and if somebody wants to actually have an Iron Man 2 discussion with me on it sometime, by all means. But there are just certain elements about that movie that I found more compelling than some other things that I saw in other movies. And I agree that I would not put it like in the top 5 best Marvel movies. But as far as the Iron Man trilogy goes, I enjoyed it the most. Now, as far as Guardians Volume 2 goes, the inherent paradox, the inherent problem with this is that Volume 1 is on my list of 5 movies that I will never say no to watching. Ever.
Agreed.
Volume 1 is just one of my favorite movies ever. And so to compare anything to this movie, even its sequel, is very difficult to do because I find very few flaws with Guardians Volume 1. I did find some flaws with Guardians Volume 2. They weren't huge. They weren't things that made me say, oh, I'm never going to watch this movie again. Would I watch that movie again? Absolutely. Would I put it above Volume 1? No. As far as like a rating scale goes, out of 10, Guardians Volume 1 probably gets like a 9.55 or something like that. Like there's just very, very little that I would nitpick about Guardians Volume 1. Volume 2, there's a little bit more to nitpick, like the music, like you said, Eric, like some of the thematic elements and some of the jokes that they use. The jokes that they use in the first movie is very much regarding trying to figure out each other's character, and they're playing off of the unknown. There's this unknown factor where it's just like, I don't know you, so I'm just going to say this and see what your reaction is. Now that they're comfortable around each other, they're using things like sarcasm. And Rocket hates sarcasm, apparently, because he's like, oh, now you've made me look foolish. And I'm like, you think? You had to go there? You had to say that? You had to like put that out there just like that? And then devoting an entire scene to a person named Taserface. Jeez, I don't know. There's just certain little nitpicky things like that make me go, okay, that could have been done differently. But overall, I love the character development. Peter got some great character development. Nebula got some great character development. Yondu, obviously. You get Baby Groot making appearances all over the place. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of whimsy. There's a lot of elements to enjoy in this movie. And I would probably give it a solid 8 to 8.5 out of 10. Is it in my top 5 movies that I will always enjoy? No. But I would have it probably in my top 5 Marvel movies. Somewhere in the top 4, like around 3 or 4, probably.
For reference, my rating is a 4.5 stars out of 5.
See, everybody's using a different thing. You're going 4.5 out of 5 stars. I'm going 8.5 out of 10. And then Eric was using like a grading system, and he gave it like a B- or something. It's like everybody's got a different way of doing it. But
if we transfer that to the Zach Arnold grading system, mine would be a 9 out of 10.
Fair enough.
And Eric's would be between an 80 and an 80. 8 and 8.5 out of 10. I almost went to out of 100. I don't know what I'm doing.
80 out of 100. That's still a letter grade. That's still a letter grade scale, though. but yeah, I mean that's probably a decent place to put it, to be honest. Like, I would say my favorite Marvel movie in the MCU so far is probably Civil War. I really enjoy what they did with Civil War. And then Winter Soldier would follow that up. And then, what did I have at number 3?
Was it like Avengers or?
No, I think
Iron Man 2?
No, it wasn't Iron Man 2. I did not have Iron Man 2 placed that high. I've got it on my Facebook feed. Give me just a second. I said it, and then I forgot it. It
happens to all of us. I've been pretty tired today, so
It was Civil War, and then Winter Soldier, which you can tell I'm a big Captain America fan, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Apparently.
Apparently. Oh, well, no. Here we go. I'm an idiot. If Guardians Volume 1 is one of my favorite movies of all time, then it's got to be my favorite Marvel movie of all time, shouldn't it? Duh.
It depends. You might have another Marvel film that's one of your favorite movies of all time.
No, it doesn't. That's a different story entirely. But Guardians Volume 1 is my favorite Marvel movie. Then Civil War, then Winter Soldier, then Volume 2, and then The Avengers. I knew I had The Avengers in there somewhere. But one thing that I pointed out that...
I'm impressed that you have Volume 2 higher than The Avengers.
Yeah, actually, yes. I prefer the Guardians Avengers over the kind of Avengers that we see in New York and in Sokovia. I don't even have Age of Ultron in that top 5. Did you notice that?
I did notice that.
I don't even have Age of Ultron in there. After being exposed to the other materials that they have out there, honestly, as hyped as it was, and as action-packed as it was, and as exciting as it was...
You think it wore off?
I think the hype really, really wore off. And people are just looking at it like, yeah, it's just white noise. And that's kind of what it was. I mean, yeah, there were some things that had bigger implications, like when Thanos decided he was going to decide to do things for himself. Ooh, big talk. When are we going to see you? We haven't seen him since. Gosh, dang it. I was expecting to see him in Guardians Volume 2. That's the other thing that I don't get, why people are knocking on Volume 1 so much. I had a lot of people tell me that they liked Volume 2 more than Volume 1. Hello? Volume 1 had the most Thanos in it of any Marvel movie to this point. It's got an entire scene with Thanos in it. It's got multiple lines from Josh Brolin in it. And instead of just, a brief moment where he picks up the gauntlet, or a moment where he's referenced or something like that, you've got an entire scene with Thanos in it in Guardians Volume 1, and it's still not something that you're thrilled about? It just boggles my mind. I'm sorry.
But I am thrilled by it, Zach. Come on, man.
Well, you are. But it's like so many people went and saw Guardians Volume 2 and just got so excited by its hype, and they were like, oh, this was such a great movie, it was so much fun, it was all these things, yeah, Volume 2. But they don't stop and look at the amazing things that they did in Volume 1. I honestly believe that if you have a copy of the first movie, watch it the night before you see the sequel, or the day before you see the sequel, or even the hour before you see the sequel, if possible. Go see the original at home and then go watch the sequel in the theaters, so that you have a very direct side-by-side comparison with both movies fresh in your mind, so you can make a more sound judgment on something like that.
Or you could do what Ben Hart did and watch Volume 1 right after he saw Volume 2.
No, don't do that. No.
Why
No.
not?
No, I'm not crazy about that, because you still have, especially if you've watched it for only the time you saw it in the theater, and then maybe one time after you bought the DVD, it's still going to have Volume 2 more fresh in your mind than Volume 1. And I really think that you need to see them in succession. Would you tell somebody to watch A New Hope after you watch Empire Strikes Back? I can't.
Not.
I can't think of any other sequence where you would say, oh yeah, go watch Toy Story 2 and then watch Toy Story 1 so you can do a comparison.
But wouldn't that work if you've seen the first film already?
I wouldn't even do that to somebody that's seen the first film. I saw A New Hope before I saw Empire, but I wouldn't go back and watch A New Hope again. If I'm doing a marathon or something, or if I'm doing some sort of special edition where they're doing a Empire Strikes Back re-release, I'm going to try and see A New Hope before I see Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to try and see Toy Story 1 before I watch Toy Story 2. I'm going to see Blade Runner before I go see Blade Runner 2049. It's just...
So would you see Rogue One? Would you see Rogue One before seeing A New Hope?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. That's a really good question. Because when you're adding in the standalone films, when you're doing the Star Wars story films, I honestly have not figured out.
It's right before it.
I have not figured out my Star Wars movie sequence yet. Now that we've got The Force Awakens and Rogue One, and we've got The Last Jedi coming out, part of me wants to go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, Rogue One, double back to 4, and watch 8. But I don't know. I really don't.
I'll tell you what I do. I will go. I think I'm going to do a Star Wars marathon alone sometime this week. I will go through all 8 films chronologically, as in 1 through 7, with Rogue One in between 3 and 4.
See, that's a very straightforward method, and it's one that I have considered. The only thing is, that can be good for somebody that has seen the series already. But if you're trying to introduce somebody to Star Wars, somebody who's never seen Star Wars before, and you're showing it to them for the first time, I don't want to show them whiny Hayden Christensen before I show them James Earl Jones as Darth Vader.
Yeah. If I'm showing it to my friend for the first time, I will show him or her the original trilogy. Then probably, oh crap. I'm just saying, I'm doing this on my own, the thing I'm doing this week, the marathon. So I am just going to watch this chronologically. But if I were showing it to a friend who hasn't seen it, I would start with the original trilogy.
Right.
The question,
and then what? The question becomes then what? Because do you show them?
Probably
do you show them
then 7, then Rogue One, and just not show the prequels. Just a time factor,
Oh man, somebody's got a little bit of haterade being sipped on the prequel trilogy. Huh?
I really don't. I'm just worried to give my friend a bad idea of, if he or she is a movie lover. Don't want to give him or her a bad idea about the saga because of some prequels. I'm not. Well, I personally love the prequels. I saw them when I was a kid, man. As a kid, that was my jam. That was what I wanted, and I loved it. But if I'm showing it to someone new who is, an adult, but around my age, I would have to reprioritize what I think would be the best thing to watch.
Yeah.
I've seen too much hate on the internet about the prequels. Sorry.
See, that's why I would think show them 4, 5, and 6, then show them 1, 2, and 3, then show some of the highlights of the new era. Like, once you've gone through them, then show something like Rogue One. Watch 4 again for context, because it's been several movies since you've seen it, and then jump to 7 and potentially 8, and then once we have the Han Solo movie coming out, we'll have to figure it out all over again. But The Force Awakens...
Isn't the Han Solo movie taking place in between 3 and 4 too?
That's what I've heard, yeah. And so there's a lot apparently happening during that time frame. You got the Rebels TV series, you've got Rogue One, and you're apparently going to have the Han Solo movie as well. So there's going to be a lot of stuff kind of being crammed in between episode 3 and episode 4. But we'll figure it out. It'll all make sense.
Oh, man.
But I would put The Force Awakens and Rogue One above Revenge of the Sith, which I consider to be the best of the prequel trilogy. So once you get through 1, 2, and 3, showing them cinematic excellence like The Force Awakens and Rogue One kind of helps them transition out of what may be considered the dark phase and bring them back into the light again, is all I'm thinking.
I remember. My mind just got back to a cool reference that was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to redirect back to our discussion.
Yes, we got really sidetracked there for a bit, didn't we?
We apologize. It happens.
Hey, tangents happen on IPC too, like a lot.
Yeah, but I just remembered something that at one point during one of the last parts of the film, when Yondu was descending with I think Rocket or whatever, he made a reference to Mary Poppins. Zach Arnold,
yes.
Could you describe that reference to the audience?
Oh, dude, that was one moment that drew a lot of laughs from me, partly because I'm just a big musical fan, and I'm a big Julie Andrews fan. And so, I watched her in The Sound of Music, and I watched her in Mary Poppins, and it was just very nostalgic for me. I was like, oh, wow, this is a great reference. And so for him to be coming, he didn't have a jetpack. He was basically using a low whistle to make his arrow help him fly. And I think he's coming down with Peter, because Peter looks up at him and he goes,
yeah.
Peter looks up at him and he goes, "You look like Mary Poppins." And
it's like, what's...
he says, is he cool? Like, he doesn't know that Mary Poppins is a woman. He's like, "Is Mary Poppins cool?" And Peter's like, "Yeah." And then he just yells out to everybody, "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!" And I loved it. There are really great moments like that in this film. Ones that definitely make it worth seeing in the theater, and definitely something that I would recommend to people. And I would recommend to them listening to the IPC discussion of Guardians Volume 2, because we're
about to do the channel promo soon, and you're just hammering it out, man.
I mean, if they enjoyed this, then I would just recommend sliding over and listening to what Ben and I have to say on IPC this week, because I'm going to be seeing it a second time, hopefully, before we get to talk about it on Friday. And so it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be very fresh on my mind, for sure.
So, we're getting to that point in the podcast where we are winding down the episode. But don't worry, we'll end up doing more in-depth IPC promos that everybody loves. I know I love it. So we'll get to more of that soon. But before we do that, get ready for the segment that always makes my week. It's a segment that gives me such joy and happiness within my soul. I like to think it gives the whole podcast panel here something to be excited about, something to look forward to, And this is the subject of pure joy and jolliness that makes everyone's Monday better. This is the one, the only, Hype Factor. It's the Hype Factor, yeah! So, it's the Hype Factor, and where we discuss what we are hyped about. There's lots of great entertainment and things to be attached to love, to look forward to upcoming stuff to think about, or something that you're doing in your life that is really awesome, or just the fact, oh my god, The Last Jedi in December. There's something to be hyped about. So I'm wondering what all of us are hyped about, and I'll go first before the rest of you, take on the hype factor. My hype factor this week is about tranquility. So I finished my last final exam in college last Thursday morning, and after that, no more finals to take. It's summer vacation, and it gives me pure joy that I don't have to do the daily grind of worrying about all these classes and ensembles and practicing and all these things to do. I still have things to do over the summer, obviously, but it's like a huge weight has been released from my shoulder. So now I have more time to finish video games that I haven't been able to finish, because of busyness and whatnot. Or I can practice my clarinet more, practice for chair for ensemble auditions in August. Yeah, I know it's 3 months away, but it's something. I'm just hyped that I have an abundance of free time to do what I love, or hang out with friends, or whatnot. And it's just, that is my hype factor of the week: tranquility. Eric Wall, what are you hyped about?
So I've recently been watching the latest and last season of Samurai Jack.
Hype!
Yeah, and the last episode ever is going to be premiering this weekend coming up, so I'm pretty happy about that, because it's going to be the finale that everyone's been waiting for, I think 13 years now.
Dang.
Yeah, and it's something that is really near and dear to my heart. I've always liked Samurai Jack, and yeah.
That is great hype factor, Eric. Yeah, and to our great special guest, who has been very articulate and has been taking up the reins whenever Eric feels under the weather or when I am too tired to speak, the great Zach Arnold. What are you hyped about this week?
I'm just happy to be on the show, guys. You give me too much credit. I am very hyped about this one particular thing that I don't know when my hype will actually be resolved, and it's frustrating. I have recently joined the Rick and Morty fandom.
Oh.
I really enjoy getting swifty. And I saw the first 2 seasons on Hulu. I binged it in under a week. And then I found a way to see the season 3 premiere. And I really, really enjoyed it. It tied into the season 2 finale really, really well. But now I am just sitting around like everybody else, wondering when the heck they're actually going to post episode 2 of season 3.
I've also been wondering that myself.
So I am excited, I am hyped, but I'm also frustrated because I'm like, give me more. But in the meantime, I'm just going to try and figure out a way to create interdimensional cable.
Nice.
Interdimensional, wow.
That
great hype factor.
I'm kind of saving this for next week, but I guess I should mention it now since Zach just mentioned Rick and Morty. There's a Rickmobile going around, and next week it goes to Philly, so I'm pretty happy about that. I know that they're also going to Dallas.
Oh, dude, you gotta let me know so I can go find that.
I'll send you the link because
they got a travel schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so cool.
Do that now.
That's really cool. I'm going to forward that to all my friends that are Rick and Morty fans, and we'll just go out and take like a giant selfie with the Brickmobile or something like that.
It's got like merchandise and all, like exclusive merchandise. Yeah,
that's really cool.
It's really nice.
That's awesome. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, this is the Backyard Watch podcast, y'all. Yay! Thank you all for listening live, or those of you who may be listening on the archive. It's just a couple guys and maybe a guest or two who come together every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, to talk about the jolly, geeky, nerdy things that are going on in this wonderful world we call Earth. We'll obviously be back next Monday night, at the aforementioned time.
Oh, wow. You want to talk about what we're doing next week?
I don't remember. What are we doing next week? I forgot.
Considering Pirates of the Caribbean comes out next week, we're not going to be talking about Pirates of the Caribbean. We're going to be talking about another movie based on a ride, which is the Tower of Terror.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Dang, that is something to really get hyped about. Let's do this. Let's see what's going on in Channel 1138. We got Sage and McMahon tomorrow. It's always fun. I see, I believe one of the hosts is Christopher McMahon. He pops in the Channel 1138 chat every once in a while, listening to the Backyard Watch podcast. He's a cool guy. Nice show. I believe it's on tomorrow night on Channel 1138. I forgot the time. But in addition to that, you got the great Star Wars Wastelands that's on Wednesday nights on Channel 1138. Hey Zach, I remember, weren't you or Ben like referenced on there? Like, weren't you doing something with that, or was that like Dominic or something? Like, I need some context, man.
Ben is a trivia regular over there. He participates in their trivia contests on a pretty frequent basis. I usually have obligations on Wednesday evenings that keep me from being a part of it, but I have heard that it is very lively, very fun, and definitely something worth tuning into. They always have a really great time on Wednesdays.
It's a super jolly show, Star Wars Wastelands, every Wednesday night on this channel. And in addition, Thursday nights, The Big Daddy, the show everyone listens to on this channel, the Star Wars Underworld podcast, featuring our great friend Ben Hart, who Zach just mentioned a minute ago. Yay. Always have great discussions about the Star Wars news. And it's super jolly. I believe it's on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. I hope I got that time right. In addition to that, Zach, give us the full IPC podcast pitch. What do you got going on in the IPC podcast?
Well, we actually have a wonderful slate of discussion topics. We kind of got it kick-started a couple of weeks ago. We have been going through the Pirates of the Caribbean series leading up to Dead Men Tell No Tales. And what's really cool about IPC, if you've never heard about it before, is we basically discuss anything and everything sci-fi and fantasy. So you could be talking about Marvel one week, we could be talking about DC the next, we could be talking about Star Wars, and then be talking about Star Trek. We have no topic that is too big, too small, or too nerdy for our tastes. So join us if you have the opportunity on Friday evenings around 9 Central Time, 10 Eastern. What is that? 7 Pacific? Did I get that right?
You're sounding like Yondu's whistle era.
Yeah. It's what I do when I think. I'm sorry. But yeah, 10 Eastern, so that should be 7 Pacific time every Friday night. And then we're also on iTunes. You just look up IPC and we should be there. Next Friday, this coming Friday, the 19th, we're discussing Guardians Volume 2, and then we're right back to Pirates of the Caribbean right after that. And our slate is actually full through the month of August, and we're actually starting to figure out our things for the month of September. So we have a lot of really awesome things on tap. We hope you guys can tune in.
Wow. IPC podcast. Wow, look at that. Zach Arnold. Man. Other than that, I believe, are those all the shows we have on this channel?
Yes.
Yeah,
I know Everything Geek podcast occurs every once in a while.
Rory Williamson does the Everything Geek podcast, and that's usually Fridays during the day our time or Saturdays during the day our time. but he's 4 or 5 hours ahead of us because his show is in Britain. So if we have any international followers that want to be a part of that, then definitely go check out his stuff. He actually just recently interviewed Robin Lord Taylor from Gotham. So if you want to be able to,
I believe he's Penguin.
He plays the Penguin, yes.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk to, you want to hear a conversation that transpired with the Penguin and the different Gotham-related spoilers that are happening during this current season, be sure to go check that out as well. A lot of awesome. I'm not either, so I mean, I'm pitching it to people who have and who are caught up, but I may have to wait a little bit before I get a chance to see it.
Wow, what a super jolly Channel 1138. Great people, good vibes, so jolly. I love it. So yeah, and we'll be back next Monday. I was about to say Friday for some reason. What?
You're just excited for IPC.
Oh yeah, so I'm man. There's so many great things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. You got the Jolly Backyard Watch podcast. Unless Eric and I both get sick and we can't do it, that would suck. But
2 weeks in a row, that's perfect.
I am confident that we will be there and be hyped up. And yeah, so we got some great social medias on the for the Backyard Watch podcast. I mean, like come on, Zach, you got to follow all our social medias, man. We got a Twitter. Did you know that, Zach?
I did know that. I just followed you guys before the show started.
Oh, wow, look at you. Best friend ever, Zach Arnold. Our Twitter is at BYWPOD or BYW Pod. We haven't posted anything. We haven't tweeted yet. We will change that soon. We promise. We also have a Facebook that is under I believe the same moniker, or you can just search Backyard Watch, and I'm sure you will find that. The profile picture it's of a great grassy backyard, and it's such a great page we got there in the Backyard Watch Facebook page. And we also have a YouTube where some of you may be listening to us on our archive on, I believe it's also youtube.com/BYWPOD. And is that correct, Eric?
No, it's the Backyard Watch podcast on YouTube. That's the channel.
You have to have 100 subscribers before you can change the YouTube URL.
Oh.
So.
Didn't know that you could change the YouTube URL.
Yeah.
So many things in this podcast.
Yeah, my friends at Next Level just recently got to 100 subscribers, and they were having a big debate on what they wanted the URL to be. So eventually, once we get 100 people over to you guys' YouTube page, it'll be a lot easier to tell people to just go to youtube.com/BYWPod. But until then, just look up the Backyard Watch podcast.
So yeah, do we have an Instagram or something, Eric?
That's also BYW Pod on Instagram. Then,
So, do we have a Google Plus?
not yet. That's in the works, though.
It's in the works, yes.
We also
So, yeah.
have a channel now.
Yeah, this is the Backyard Watch podcast. Just want to say one more thing before we head out. 3 years ago, almost exactly 3 years ago, May 18th, 2014, it's just this cool little guy named Chris Sequel who's the station manager at Channel 1138. Yeah, pretty cool guy. After the second episode of Zach's IPC podcast, Chris is like, I'm in the backyard. I hear crickets. Should I go online? And all of us in chat were like, yeah, go online. Yeah. And yeah, it's just one man's vision of capturing the crickets created a phenomenon full of close friends and now a podcast for the public to listen to. Thank you for joining us on the Backyard Watch podcast, and we hope to continue it as long as we are able to, and keep the Backyard Watch heritage going. And I've met so many great people because of this initiative, or whatever we call this because of the Backyard Watch idea. And it has been an honor to meet you all and hang out with you all on Google Hangouts and just have fun. And it's just one of the reasons why I'm so happy that we have this podcast. So as we celebrate what's technically our 3-year anniversary, we just like to thank all the great people who made this possible. Thank Chris Sequel, man. Great station manager here. Born of great ideas and very smart and knows what to do and just yeah. So that's our show. Thank you. Thanks, Eric, for being my co-host. And thank you, Zach, for being our guest. Do any of you have any final words to say?
No, just thanks for having me on, and I look forward to any other opportunity that you guys are willing to have me. This was fun.
Leave us with a fortune cookie.
Oh, goodness, you're going to put me on the spot like that, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, now I really feel like I'm on IPC. This is officially the conclusion of the 4th episode of the Backyard Watch podcast for Eric Wall Jr. and Fluffy. Shoot,
Jeffrey
why
White.
can't I think of your name?
Jeffrey White.
I just know you as Fluffy. Oh, for Eric Wall and Jeff White, I'm Zach Arnold. Thank you for joining us tonight. But before we leave you, we just want to leave you with this thought. Adaptation is the key to survival. Hope that you all survive until next week. Until then, good night.